Hey, welcome back. So now I'm back here with my BBI modules 201. Last time we did an adventure game. Now we're going to do an arcade platformer. So I'm going to start a new project and create a blank tile set, and I'm going to call this Arcade Test. And I'm going to make sure to choose the Arcade Platformer BBI. Alright, okay. And I'm gonna save this project, Arcade Test, like that. Right, so like before, the first thing I'm going to do is to copy the graphics. So first of all, I'm gonna delete these default graphic files. And then I'm going to go to Tutorial Assets, BBI Assets, and Arcade Platformer Graphics, and I'm going to copy all the graphic files here. Back to the main graphic assets folder in NESmaker, and the Arcade Test, and I'm just going to copy them in here, like that. Next thing I'm going to do is to import the palettes. So I'm going to go to all palettes, import, and I'm going to go back to the tutorial assets folder, BBI assets, arcade platformer, and all palettes. The same thing for monster palettes, all monster palettes, import, all monster palettes. And I'm also going to import the game objects. Import all game objects, like so. And also the monster objects. Import all monsters. There we go. And I'm just quickly going to make a monster group for them. Monsters 1. I'm going to select both the monster objects there. Right. So now we have done all the imports. I'm not, like last time, I'm not going to import the input scripts. We're going to set them up manually. Actually, I'm going to import the HUD. We set up the HUD last time, so we don't need to do that again. So I'm going to import HUD data, and there's actually a HUD file we can import here. So I'm going to do that, and there's no text here because I'm not going to be using any text boxes in this game. But if we go to HUD elements, we can see that now I have score set up here and lives over here. And like last time, it's just a matter of choosing what element over here we're going to use. So for example, here I have element 2. That's the variable my lives, which is going to display how many lives I have. And this is just a HUD asset, which is just text. Next one is my score. That's going to display here. And by the way, my score, that's actually several variables, so that we can have a number that's that can display a large number, a large score. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 digits. That's how big number we can create. All right, now I'm gonna quickly just start up here, and I'm just gonna start creating a simple screen here for my arcade platform game. So I'm gonna do this really simple, just gonna create a frame like that. Whoops. And let's see. And I'm just gonna make this thing solid. So I just choose solid collision and just create a frame around this. So something like that. And then I'm just gonna go right into screen info. That's always one of the first things that I do. So I'm going to go into Day Monsters, Monster Group, select the one I just made, and I'm going to set up all the sprite palettes. So item pal, mon pal 1, mon pal 2. Actually, I'm gonna do that for day triggered as well. So just in case we're gonna trigger this screen, I like to have this in place. So day monsters, day triggered monsters, right? Okay, so now I'm just gonna place my player right here, and then now I have sort of a basic playground, but I haven't set up any inputs. So let's do that right now. So I'm gonna go to scripts down here, input scripts, base 45 BBI, game mod Arcade Platformer base, and inputs. And like I said last time, these inputs are the ones that you will need for the Arcade Platformer. You don't need to get one from the platformer module and one from here, one from there. All the inputs you need are here. So what do I need? Well, I'm gonna have to move left and right. So I'm gonna include these two: move left with action, move right with action, stop moving with action. So now I can move left, right, I can stop, but I'm also going to have to do some jumping. So I'm going to include jump, double with action. I'm going to come back to the double thing in just a second. But jump, double with action, that's the jump script. I need that one. Now there is actually a script here called var jump, variable jump, which will allow you to have if you want a big jump, then you just hold down the jump key and you can jump to the max jump height, or if you let go halfway up, then you just fall down. But in this game, I don't want that. I want a set distance, a set jump distance for this particular game. So I'm not going to include var jump in this case. I'm going to jump the same distance every time. Right, so we can move left, we can move right, we can stop moving, and we can jump. All right, let's set up those inputs. So I'm gonna go to my input editor now. Make sure that I choose main game, and if I hold right, then I'm going to move right with action. So like I said last time, these input scripts also include changing the action step, so we don't have to worry about that. So we just have to set up for hold right, move right with action, okay? And release right, that's of course stop moving with action. For left, I'm gonna say hold left, that's gonna be move left with action. Release left, that's stop moving with action. And also, if I press the A key, I'm going to jump. So yeah, let's just test this out first of all. All right, I'm walking and jumping. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Right. So I'm walking left and right, and I can jump. And when I let go, I stop. So we have some basic movement right now. And as you can see, we accomplished that with just a few setups here in the input editor, which is kind of nice. So move left and right. We change the action step, both for moving and for jumping. So this looks fine. So just one comment here for my player object. If I go to object details, if I go to actions, and for the idle state, now I set the action for idle state to stop moving and 1. Now the reason for that is that I want to make sure that every time he's in the idle state, he's going to stop moving. So for example, if something happens and let's say I get hurt into the hurt state, and when the hurt state is done, we go back to the idle state. So let's say this was a game where I could get hurt, which is action step 7. And maybe I had some recoil or whatever, and I was thrown back. When that's done, we go back to the idle state, and I want to make sure that then he's going to stop moving. So I just like to keep the action for idle state to stop moving. Okay, well, that's the basic setup, so that's great. We have basic thing here. Now let's just quickly take a look at the jump script, because I said that it was called jump double. That means that this jump script is capable of double jumping, but it's not set up that way by default. And if you don't want any double jumping, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to do anything. It works like a normal jump script. But if I go to my project settings up here, I have my user variables. There's a user variable here called power-ups. Now, like I said, you don't have to use this if you don't want to, and maybe it doesn't make sense in a game like this. But if you wanted a double jump, then all you need to do is set power-ups here to 1. Now we could do it right here. If I just, in my game, let's say in this game, I want double jump from the very start. This guy just has a double jump. That's how this game is. Well, fine. If we just go into project settings, user variables, and we set power-ups to 1, then he's gonna have a double jump. That's it. Now I could make some pickup object that I could pick up, and that would set power-ups here to 1. So it's really up to you, but let's try that out. Let's just set power-ups here to 1. All right, and test the game. So now I should have a double jump. Let's see if I do. Yeah. Now I just have a double jump from the start, if that's how I want this game to be. So, but like I said, I don't want to have a double jump in this game, so I'm just gonna leave the power-ups here at 0. So, just to show you how that works, that the jump script is capable of doing double jumps, but if you don't want double jumps, you don't have to worry about it. Don't have to think about it at all. All right, so now we have a basic setup here. Now, one of the main things in the BBI modules, the improvements for the platformer games, actually there are several things, but let's look at one of those things right now. So I'm just gonna make a ledge right here. I'm gonna make it solid, and I'm just gonna make a ladder like that, and make sure to use the ladder collision like that. So right now I can't climb this ladder because I haven't included any climb input scripts. So now I have to go back to my input scripts, and the base 4.5 BBI game Arcade Platformer base and inputs. So in the default NESmaker we have 2 input scripts for climbing. We have climb up and climb down. That's it. And that's the reason when in the default NESmaker setup, if you let go of up, if you let go of down in the middle of a ladder, your character will just keep on doing his climb animation. Personally, I think that looks bad, doesn't look good. So I fixed that with these these new input scripts for climbing. I'm going to show you how that works. So now I'm going to include 3 input scripts for climbing. Climb ladder down with action, climb ladder stop with action, and climb ladder up with action. So let's just set up these inputs first. So I'm going to go to input editor right now. And this is of course the main game state. If I hold up on my D-pad, then I'm going to climb up with action. So I'm just going to add that, hold up, going to climb up. But if I release up, then I'm going to run this script called climb ladder stop. So I'm going to include that when I release up on the D-pad. Same thing for down. So I'm going to say, if I hold down, I'm going to climb down. If I release down, then I'm going to do this climb ladder stop thing. All right, first of all, let's just see if that works. So now I should be able to climb up and down. And let's see what happens if I stop in the middle of the ladder. Climbing up, great. Climbing down, great. So now if I stop in the middle of the ladder, he doesn't wiggle around like that. He actually stops. Walk up, walk down. So I think that looks much better than having him wiggle around with his animation, even if he's standing still. Also, another thing that I added into the input scripts here is the snapping. So if I just stand over here and hold down, or maybe there, my player snaps to the ladder. So I'm not climbing here up on the side of the ladder or anything like that. He always snaps to the ladder like that. Again, personally, I think that looks better. All right. So how does this stop thing work? Well, when it comes to code, you don't have to worry about it. It's handled in the scripts themselves, as long as you include this climb ladder stop thing. But we need to set up the player object in a special way. So first of all, I use the same action step like default NESmaker. I use action step 3 for climbing. Now it's important that you remember to check this ignore gravity checkbox, because when you're climbing up and down, if you don't include that ignore gravity, your player's just gonna stand there bouncing on the ground. It's not gonna be able to climb up. So action step 3, that's the climb action step. We need to use this ignore gravity checkbox. So other than that, I just set an animation speed for the climb animation. And if we take a look here, we see that the animation type is climb. All right, normal, pretty normal stuff. But what about that stop thing? Well, let's go to my animation types over here. So here's my climb animation. It's just 2 frames. So I have animation speed 4 on this one. So my climb animation just looks like that. But there's also an animation here called climb idle. That looks like this. So if I play this animation, nothing really happens. But I still have 2 frames for this animation. It just so happens that both of these are the same frame. So I have 2 animation types for climbing. Both of those animations have 2 frames. Climb, which is this one. Climb idle, which is this one. Right. So if I go back to object details now, and I go here to my animation types and climb, now we can see that this is a kind of a special way of doing it, but what I did here was that I said it's only when the player direction is up. Only when the player direction is up are we going to play the actual climb animation. If it's not up, then we just play this climb idle animation. And this is the reason that I need to have 2 frames for both the actual climb animation and his idle climb animation. Because both of those animations are set to the animation type called climb here. This might sound logical. When his direction is up, then we do the climb thing, but what about down? Well, you don't have to worry about this because I just made this as simple as possible. I just chose one direction for the actual climb animation. The rest is just the idle thing. Now this is handled in the code, so you don't have to worry about it. As long as you remember to set up all of the directions here with the climb idle animation, except for up. That's the actual climb animation. So behind the scenes in the code, there's actually a thing where we check for what direction it's set right now, and the climb scripts set the direction for up. It doesn't matter if you're moving up or down the ladder, it just sets the direction to up. And there's also a little thing in the background that catches your direction before you go up or down the ladder. So when you get down the ladder or at the very top of the ladder, then you get back the direction that you actually had. So for example, if you were facing right, if you're facing right and you're climbing the ladder, when you get to the top of the ladder, you're still going to be facing right. So all of that stuff is actually stuff you don't have to worry about because it's already there in the code. But you do need to remember to set the climb animation here for climb idle for all of these except up. That's the actual climb animation. Hopefully that makes sense. But like I said, we also need to have, even though he's just standing still here, we still need 2 frames. Because since they are both in the same animation type here, it's still going to play. And the climb animation type here is set up with 2 frames. So just remember to set 2 frames for both climb and climb idle, and you'll be fine. All right. Action step 3, that's the climb. Okay. So that's climbing. Now we can move back and forth, we can jump, we can climb up and down. That's great. So I also included, I also modified the trampoline tile. So let me just place a trampoline over here. Now you have to experiment a little bit with the color palettes. In this case, maybe it was a little stupid, but I chose a black background for this. Now, the point here is that I wanted the trampoline tile to have a bounce animation. I want it to look like it's actually bouncing, instead of just having a static trampoline, which looks exactly the same, even though you're jumping on it. Which is the default NESmaker way of doing it. So now I'm just gonna create a little thing here, something like that, and yeah, so I'll just do something like that, I think, and I'm gonna set the trampoline tile collision for the trampoline graphic there. So now I have a trampoline tile over here. Great. Now I have already set this up here in game objects. So what happens is that when you jump on this trampoline, a game object will be created on top of this, and that's what's creating the illusion of actually jumping or actually making the trampoline bounce. It's not animating, of course, but it looks like it's animating because this game object is going to display on top of the tile. And that's what I was talking about just a moment ago, about experimenting with colors. Because it's important that this object has colors all over here. And it needs to be 2 by 2 to be the same size as a background tile. So I have this game object that is the exact same size as my the graphics for my trampoline tile here. So when I bounce on this game object is gonna display on top of it here. And it's really simple actually. It doesn't do anything special. If I go into object details here and go into actions, it doesn't really do anything. I said stop moving. I don't even think you need that. You could probably set it for null as well. But the important part here is that I have set the timer here for 1. And at the end of the action, I set destroy me. So when I jump on that tile, on the trampoline tile, this game object will display on top of it for just a brief moment here, 1 time unit. After that, it's going to be destroyed. So then we see the graphic for the trampoline tile again. But you probably need to set ignore gravity here to make it look, we don't want this illusion to fall down. We don't want the graphic here for the game object to move around. We want it to be exactly on top of the trampoline tile. So ignore gravity, probably a good idea to set that. But important part, just set 1 for game action, end of action, destroy me. So when I jump on this tile, that game object will be created on top of here for just a moment, then it's going to be destroyed. So let's see if that works. Well, first of all, let me just show you one more thing. Project settings. If I go to user constants here, we have something here called obj trampoline. It's set to 12 right now. That means game object 12, which is this one. This is game object number 12. So you could have whatever object set to this to be the trampoline object. Just change this number here in user constants. So if this was game object 1, for example, I just set this to 1. But by default, it's set to game object 12. So, right, now let's see if this works. So I have my trampoline tile here. If I jump on it, you can see it looks like the trampoline is actually bouncing. But it's just a game object displaying on top of the trampoline graphic. Just a brief second, and then it goes away. So we get this bouncing illusion, which, in my personal opinion, looks a lot better than just having a static trampoline tile. Alright, so that's new in the BBI modules. Also, we have looked at this before. Actually, I think we're done with this trampoline stuff, so I'll just do that. Now, we have looked at this before, but let me just show you again. So if I do something like this, now we have this hide behind thing. Yeah. Okay, fine. Let me just set up some collision here, like that. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to hide behind this little grid here, this little whatever it is. So the way I do that is simply by selecting the hide behind tile. So I'm just gonna paint the hide behind collision for these tiles, like that. But notice something here. I have a column of black, completely black tiles here. The reason for that is that when this guy collides with a hide behind tile, there's an object flag that is flipped to make sure that the sprite is displaying behind background graphics. Now, first of all, let me just show you how this works right now. So now, just walking in front of background graphics, no problem. But when I get to here, he is displayed behind the background graphics, as I'm sure you can see. So now I'm walking behind the background graphics. So I mentioned this before, but let's just repeat it right now. The hide behind tile is going to hide the sprite behind any color besides this. I don't know if you can call it transparent color, but the one that's black right now for all of these. So it's going to hide this sprite behind any color besides this one, this black one. So in this case, I've chosen this subpalette, so it's going to hide this sprite behind these three colors. And that's the reason that I have this black column here, because now it looks smooth, it looks natural. I'm walking in here and I go behind these tiles, so it looks okay. What if I didn't do that? What if I just used blue tiles here instead, like that? What's going to happen now? Let's take a look. So remember, all the way up into here we have null tiles. So this has no collision right now, but they are blue background tiles. Over here we have these hide behind tiles. So now I'm going to go into the hide behind tiles, and that happens. So the moment I collide with a hide behind tile, the sprite goes behind any color that is not black. So it just pops behind those colors, and it looks a little weird because now he actually goes behind this sky or whatever, this blue background, and we don't want him to snap like that. So that's the reason why when you're using these hide behind tiles, it's always a good idea to think about your level design or your graphics, and just probably a good idea to just have some black tiles right next to it, so that even though we're colliding with these hide behind tiles and the sprite goes behind the graphic, it won't go behind these black tiles, because that's this transparent color, the background color, whatever you want to call it. So just something to keep in mind when using hide behind tiles. Just make sure that you don't put hide behind tiles right next to some other colored graphic tile. Right, that's the hide behind tiles. Now I've also showed this in the previous video, but let's just repeat it again. So we have this little diamond here. So I'm gonna just I'm gonna have 3 diamonds here. These are gonna be some pickup things. I'm going to pick up these diamonds. So the way I do that is just by choosing the price tile. And I just make sure that these diamonds are price tiles. Now the price tiles, they are set up so that, and this price tile of course is default in NESmaker, but it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't help you go to the next screen or anything like that. These price tiles will give you a score. Don't remember how much how much you get from each of these tiles right now, but doesn't really matter. But you get a little score, and the tile goes away. It actually changes to this top left one, which is just a blue tile, so it looks like the diamond goes away. So you pick up a diamond, it goes away, you get a little score, and like I mentioned actually in the preview video, when this screen loads, it counts how many price tiles are on this screen. So the screen knows how many price tiles are here. When you have collected all of them, the player object goes into what I have called a happy state. So if I go to my player object now, object details and actions, there's actually an action step here, action step 4, which right now is set up with a happy animation. So when I collect all the price tiles on this screen, my character or my player goes into action step 4. So in this case, I have a happy animation for action step 4, which is going to play for 10 time units. So it's going to do that for 10 time units, and at the end of the action, I've set that to go to warp. So like I said last time we talked about this, we don't just collect all the tiles and bang, we are warped to a new screen. We collect all the tiles, he goes into this happy animation, and at the end of that animation, then we go to the whatever screen we want to warp to. So let's see how that works. First of all, right now I set this screen to warp out to screen 0, 0. Now 0, 0, that's the screen we're already at here. So I'm going to warp to the same screen, but that's okay. But I just need to set the warp in location so we don't warp up here in the left corner. So I'm going to set the warp in location at the same spot here. So what's going to happen now? I just collect all these price tiles. The player's going to go into action step 4 for a little while, and at the end of that action, then we're going to warp. So let's see if that works. So I collect the tile, it changed into this top left blue tile, and here we go. I get 100 points for one tile. Now that's something we can change. Show you that in a second. But collect one price tile, 2 price tiles, and when I collect this third, he goes into action step 4, and then we warp. So personally, I think that looks pretty good. So now we have 300 points, and usually would warp to another screen, of course. Right, so let's take a quick look at the price tile. I'm going to go to project settings, script settings, and I'm going to go down to price tile, the one it's called price. Now there's a one called price block. That's just this kind of question mark block that you have in Super Mario Bros. 1, where you jump beneath it and something appears. I think there might be a little problem with that tile here. Probably going to fix that in the future. But we're not going to be using that right now. I just wanted to mention that the price block, the question mark block, might have a little issue here in the Arcade Platformer. But right now we're using this tile that's just called price. So normal price tile. So I'm gonna open that, and here we can see what happens. So for the price tile, it just changed to collision the graphic. It changed to the graphic, which is up here, 0. That's the first one. And also collision 0, which will make this a null tile, which in practice just means that when we collect this tile, it looks like it goes away. But of course, we have to be careful where we place this. If this was a black background like this, when I collect this tile, it will turn into something like that. So that of course has to do with level design, but it's just something to keep in mind. Collect this tile, gonna turn into blue tile, which will also be a null tile. So something to keep in mind. But that's the first thing that happens. The next thing that happens is that we add a value. Now, if you haven't used AddValue, the AddValue macro before, might be a little strange, feels a little complicated at first, but it's not too bad. If we look at the description that Joe has written here, it actually makes sense. So you have 4 arguments here. What should we put in those? Well, we can see that the first one is how many places this value has. Now that is, of course, our score variable. Now we have 8 digits here, so we need to make sure that this is also 8. We have 8 digits. That's how many places this value has. Then we have home variable. What's the home variable? Well, in our case, it's my score. Now, if we look at the project settings user variables, we have my score here. Now, I said a few moments ago that we have several variables for this. But when it says the home variable, it's the first one up here. Now, if you just leave this as it is, you don't have to worry about this. But if you make stuff like this for yourself, or if you modify this, it's important that these come in the correct order. So we have the one that's just called my score here, but then we have these other ones down here. So yeah, we don't have to go too much into detail here. Right now, let's just accept that the first one here is the home variable, the one that's just called my score. That's our home variable. Right, so that's the one, the second one. Then the amount to add. So if you're going to add 100 or 1000 or 10,000, something like that, where the number is 1, then that's this third one, the amount to add. Now in this case, I'm going to add 100. So I need to set 1 here. That's the amount to add. But then the next one is what place value is receiving the addition. Sounds a little complicated, but if we look just below here, it says 0, that means the 1 place. 1, that means the 10th place. 2, that's the 100th place, etc. So if we wanted to have 1,000 points, if we want to get 1,000 points for this diamond, then we would have to change this last one to 3, because 2, that's the 100th place, so 3 would be the 1,000th place, 4 would be the 10,000th place, and so on. So that's how this AddValue macro works. So like I said, at first it might seem a little complicated, but if you just read these comments, then it's not too bad. So in this case, we get 100 points for a price tile. The next one here, update HUD element. Now we looked at this last time. This is of course to make sure that the HUD itself is updated instantly when we collect this tile. So when I collect a diamond or a price tile, we want this HUD area to be updated, or this part of the HUD to be updated instantly. If you don't do that, then it won't be updated until we go to a new screen, or if the screen is somehow updated. But we want to make sure that it's updated instantly. So that's why we use this update HUD element. And like I said last time, we need to make sure that we're updating the right HUD element. In this case, it's HUD element 1. And if we look at our HUD element 1, that's this my score thing, which has 8 digits, so that's this actual score here. That's the HUD element we want to update. All right, now I put do wait frame here. That's something I normally do when a screen is updated somehow. If I change a tile, if I do whatever. This is mostly in scrolling games, that's super important. But I just included it here as well. So what this does is just waits a single frame to make sure that the screen is updated before we continue. Now in a scrolling game, if you don't do that, then you run a very big risk of having some corrupt graphics on the screen. So I just like to include that. It's just one frame. It's not like it's going to slow down your game tremendously. It's just one frame. So we wait one frame to make sure the screen's updated before we continue. Ink my prices. So there's a variable here called my prices, user variable. So we increase that one. Then we say load A with my prices. So we check how many prices we have. Then we compare it with something called prices on screen. That's another variable. Now the prices on screen, that's the one where when the screen loads and the screen counts how many price tiles are there, that is put into prices on screen. So we never put anything in there ourselves. The screen counts the tiles and puts how many tiles are on the price tiles are on the screen, puts that into this variable, prices on screen. So basically what's happening here is that when we collect a price tile, we increase price tiles, my prices, then we check, we compare it against this thing where the screen counted how many price tiles are there. If they are not equal, then we just continue the script, which basically just ends this script. But if the number of price tiles we have collected is equal to the one that the number that the screen counted when we loaded the screen, which basically means that when the screen loaded, it counted 1, 2, 3 price tiles. When I collect this, my prices goes up to 1, collect this, then it's 2, then it's 3. So when I collect this last one, my price is going to be 3, the same number that the screen counted. And if that happens, then we change to action step 4. So it's a long explanation, but I thought it was important that you understand how this actually works. The point is that when you collected all the prices on the screen, your player goes into action step 4. That's the bottom line. Right, so that's how price tiles work. We go into action step 4 when we collected all the price tiles. And I think we saw an example of that. Let's just do it one more time. So my prices goes up by 1, 2. We also get the score updated up here, collect the last one, and we go into action step 4. Right. That's price tiles. Now, I also have this thing. Actually, let's get rid of these price tiles now. We also have this hurt tile. Now hurt tiles in the default NESmaker, like I mentioned before, will just warp you to a new screen, do something like that. This hurt tile, if we look at it here, let's take a quick look at the code. We can see that this hurt tile, first of all, it checks, is it a player, is it a monster, or is it some other object? If it's some other object, it's just going to be destroyed. If it's a monster object, then we run the code for hurting a monster. If it's a player, then we run the code for hurting a player. Now, that's also something that I've changed from the default NESmaker setup. So if we go back to project settings right now, under common here, we have something called handle player hurt, but we also have something called handle player death. Same thing for monsters. Handle monster hurt, handle monster death. There's even another one here called handle monster drops, if you want the monster to drop something. But in our case now, when our player collides with this hurt tile, we're gonna run this code for handle player hurt. So that's this one. Now the first thing here is that this is actually a code from the default NESmaker setup. So this just allows us to jump on enemies to kill them. So that's the first thing that comes here. But the actual hurt code is here. First of all, we can't be hurt if we are happy, if we are in action step 4 or action step 7. Now action step 7 in this module is death. I don't have any health there, so it doesn't make sense to have a hurt state, because it's basically a one-hit kill here. So 7 is a death state, not a normal hurt state. So if we are in one of those two states, happy or action step 4 or action step 7, if you are in one of those two, then nothing's going to happen. If he isn't in a death state, we don't want to restart that death state. If he's in a happy state, if he just collected all the tiles, and while he's standing there being happy and an enemy collides with him, we don't want to interrupt that thing. We actually want we just ignore hurting the player if he's in that state. But if it's not in one of those two, if he's idle, walking, jumping, or climbing, then he can be hurt. So then we run the handle or the player death code. So we don't subtract any health or anything like that. This is a one-hit kill, so we go directly to the player death code, which is this one, handle player death. So what happens here? Well, we set up the continue map and continue screen, and then we go to we change the action step to action step 7. So basically, when we collide with a monster, we go into action step 7, which, like I said, is the death state in this case. We also decrease my lives. So if my lives is 0, then we set the game over map and game over screen to warp to map and warp to screen, which means that that happens automatically. If we have 0 lives, then we're gonna warp to the game over screen. If we don't have 0 lives, then we're gonna warp to something else. So the way that works, all that's handled in action step 7. So let's go back to the player now. The player, object details, actions, action step 7. Right now it's set up with a death animation. I also, just to be fancy, I said shake the screen. When we get hurt, he goes into the death animation and the screen shakes a little bit. That happens for 5 time units. And at the end of that action, we go to warp. where do we warp? Well, here in the death script, like we just saw, we are setting the map and screen to continue map, and here we say cam screen. So we're basically cam screen. That's the screen you're actually on. So in practice, this is going to restart the screen. We're going to warp to the same screen. When you get hit by a monster, you go into this hurt animation, which is action step 7. At the end of that, we go to warp. But if our lives were not 0, that's set to cam screen. So we just warp to the same screen that we were on, which will probably look okay. We're gonna restart the screen. But if our lives are 0, then we are going to warp to the game over screen. So you don't have to worry too much about this code. I'm just trying to explain how this works. The point is that all of this happens in action step 7 for the player. So action step 7 needs to be set up with some sort of animation. You don't have to use the screen check, of course. You could set it to null, whatever. But the point is that the end of the action needs to be set to go to warp for this to work. Right. So now if I change this spike thing to a hurt tile like that, now I'm gonna go into the death animation, and at the end of that animation I'm gonna go to warp. Now since I have 3 lives, my lives are not 0, that means we're gonna warp to the same screen that we're on right now. Right, so let me just do that. Go to into action step 7, play as hurt animation, then we go to warp, which just happens to be the same screen that we're on right now. And we did in fact lose a life up here. So let me just do that again. And now I have 1 life left. What's going to happen now? When it's going to warp to a game over screen, I haven't set up any game over screen right now, so we're going to have a little issue here, but I'm going to do it anyway. And we warp to the game over screen, but there was nothing there, so this happens. So the game over screen is the same as last time. It's the bottom right one. So if I wanted this to work properly, I would set up a screen here, make sure to set the warp in location here somewhere in the middle, just make sure to have solid tiles all around, and just set this game over screen up with a game over game state. And of course, to get out of the game over screen, I would have to add an input script here. So where would you want to go after the game over screen? Well, some games you might want to warp back to the start screen, or you might want to warp directly here, whatever. Actually, I don't think there's a warp input script here. Let me just check. Yeah, so we don't have a warp input script here. So what you could do in this case was to set up this thing. Start game with new continue points, which is just going to start at this screen. Actually, let me just quickly make a start screen here. I'm not even going to paint it black. I'm just going to set this screen up with solid collisions all around here. Like that. Right. So this is going to be my start screen. Now I need to set the game state to start screen here. It's not going to have a menu, so I just leave menu options at 0 here. Let's see, I'm going to change my tile set to, I think it's the last one here. Yeah. Whoa. Looks really bad, but whatever. I just set up the title here. and press start. It's going to be a terrible start screen, but that's my start screen. I'm going to place my player in here. So it's set up with start screen game state, and I placed my player object in here. So I also need to say what screen I'm going to go to after the start screen. It's set up to 0, 0. That works out great because that's my first screen in my game right now. And I just need to make sure that I have a warp in location here at that screen. So I also need to go back to my input scripts. Base45 BBI, game, arcade platformer, inputs, and since I'm not going to have any menu, anything like that, I don't have to worry about that stuff. So I just include this simple thing called start game with new continue points. Basically just start a new game. So that's actually the default NESmaker script. So I'm going to add that one. And in my input editor, I say that on the start screen, if I press start, then I'm going to run that start script. So now I'm going to start on my terrible start screen, but when I press start, I'm going to go to this first level. Let's see if that works. So here we are. Oh, I didn't even hide the HUD or the sprites. That, well, it just matches the rest of this terrible screen. But here's my start screen. I press start, and then I go to the first level. So that's great stuff. Of course, you really should go to screen info here on the start screen and hide sprites and hide the HUD. I really should have done a better job here at the start screen, but I think you get the idea. Also, here's another thing. Let's say that I did a good job. I painted the background black here and I set this up properly. Then I could do something like place a few diamonds here just to get fancy. And now this is gonna look absolutely terrible, but it's gonna show you something. So if I now go to screen info, I can enable palette cycling by clicking this checkbox. What that does, it's going to cycle or go through these colors, rotate those colors. So whatever is set up, this subpalette is going to rotate those colors. If I had, you know what? Instead of just talking about it all the time, I'm actually going to do it. So I'm going to fix my little mistake here. Try to do it as quickly as possible to not use too much time on stuff like this. But in this case, it's probably a good idea just to do it properly. So I'm just painting all of this black, right like that. Get a proper start screen. And of course now I also have to set up the collision again. Do that really quickly now. Okay, I messed up a little down there, doesn't matter. There we go. Now we have a proper start screen. I can even adjust this a little bit like that. So now it looks much better. The point I wanted to show you now was that by just checking this checkbox, palette cycling, whatever is set up with this subpalette is gonna have palette cycling. So how does that look? Let's see. So now it looks like this, a fancy little animation, whatever you want to call it, just by enabling palette cycling. So now I have this fancy start screen and I can actually start the game. But if I didn't want that palette cycling, I just uncheck this checkbox. So it's a handy thing. Just by clicking a checkbox, we use palette cycling for this first sub palette. Only for this one. Right. So we have a start screen, we have a level, we have a game over screen. We've seen that before, so I'm not going to do that again. But I think we've seen the most important things here in the Arcade Platformer. So now you should be able to make a game where you can go from start to finish, start screen, the actual game, and a game over screen. Now, I probably should add a warp script in here for a future update, so that when you're on the game over screen and you press the start button, you go back to the start screen, for example. I think that's the default way that most NES games did it back in the day. When you're on the game over screen, you press start, you go back to the start screen. So you can just make that input script yourself. It's just the warp macro. Just make sure you go warp from here to this screen, for example. But anyway, you should be able to make a pretty decent game without doing too much coding yourself. Hopefully no coding at all. Yeah, so there's another thing here. Let me just show you while we're at it. So the last thing that I added, one of the last things that I added was the moving platforms. So that's for all the platform modules: Arcade Platformer, LR Platform, and Metroidvania. So the way we do that is just by setting up a game object. In this case, I set it to be 2 tiles wide, with 2 here. I just used a simple graphic like that for both of these. So if we go to object details here on this one, and by the way, I made 2 different types. This says LR, which is a moving platform. It's going to move from left to right. This other one, UD, that's up and down. So if I place those platforms here, we have left, right, and we have up, down. So first of all, let's just see if those work. Yeah, there we have the moving platforms. Can we stand on top of them? Yes, we can. So it works really great. And this is not something I did. This is work by Sinestist from the NESmaker forum. It's really cool. So the way we do that is by just making game objects. And if we go to object details, I set the entire graphic here up with a hitbox, bounding box. And for actions, this is the important part. For actions, now I've set, this is the one that moves left and right. So it's going to start by moving right. And I've set ignore gravity. I don't want this moving platform to fall down. So we need to set in ignore gravity. But there's a new flag here called walkable. This walkable flag is the thing that will actually make it a platform. So you can walk on top of this thing. So that's the important part here. Now the one that moves left and right, we just need to set speed here, acceleration speed, and I just say reverse direction if it hits a solid. But for the one that moves up and down, which is this one, we need to set that up with a normal max speed and acceleration speed, but also a jump speed. And according to Sinestist, it's probably a good idea to set the jump speed for the same value as normal max speed. So these two numbers should be the same. And I just set reverse direction for solid here as well. And then if we go to actions, this is important because there are new action types for the moving platform that goes up and down. So we have moving platform up, moving platform down, and moving platform stop. I'm not using stop in this case. In this case, I have a moving platform down for 3 time units. Then I advance to the next action step, which is moving platform up 3 time units. And at the end of that action, we go to first, which is this one. So it's just going to go down, up, down, and up, and so on. And for both of these action steps, I have set ignore gravity and walkable for both of those action steps. So that's important. So that's the moving platforms. All right, well, now I think we're done. So I know this is a lot. I'm gonna try my best to have timestamps for this video. So in case you want to go back to something, you can just go to that specific timestamp. But that's it. That's the Arcade Platformer. So I think we're done for now. So have a great day. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.